Hi guys, welcome to my channel and my newest video. Thank you for clicking on it. Today we are going to do devotions. I hope you all are well. Let's start off with a prayer. Jehovah, we come to you first and foremost to thank you for this day and for all of your many blessings. I ask that you please watch over all those suffering from anxiety, medical issues, loss. Please give them the strength that they need to overcome the ailments in their lives. I ask that you specifically watch over Cindy and her family. Help them to have a positive resolution to the issues that they are going through right now. I ask that you please watch over Mike and keep him safe, and please bring him home to me safely. Please keep both of us safe from getting coronavirus. Please watch over all of those who are suffering from it and who have had it. Let them all and everyone who is going through something use what they are going through as a way of drawing closer to you. I love you so very much. Bring this to you in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so today we are going to read from Daniel. The title of this is Don't Get Even, Get Over It. It says, revenge is a natural response. Anyone can do it, and everyone does. Tell others about a time when you responded that way, and they will be able to sympathize with you. It's understandable and logical. It's even intuitive. For many, it's a way of life. For a few, it's not even an option. Daniel was one of the few, the humble, the forgiving. In this reading, he learns of the tragic future awaiting King Nebuchadnezzar, a man who has offended Daniel beyond the limits of reason. As you read, notice especially Daniel's attitude toward the king. Daniel sets an example to follow. So we're going to read Daniel chapter 4, verse 1 through chapter 6, verse 28. And I am going to try and read as much of this as possible. So here we go. Chapter 4. From King Nebuchadnezzar to all the peoples, nations, and language groups dwelling in all the earth, may your peace abound. I am pleased to declare the signs and wonders that the Most High God has performed toward me. How great are his signs, and how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his rulership is for generation after generation. Nebuchadnezzar, was at ease in my house and prospering in my palace. I saw a dream that made me afraid. As I lay on my bed, the images and visions of my head frightened me. So I issued an order to bring in before me all the wise men of Babylon, so that they could make known to me the interpretation of the dream. At that time, the magic practicing priests, the conjurers, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers came in. When I told them what the dream was, they could not make its interpretation known to me. At last there came in before me Daniel, whose name is Belteshazzar, after the name of my God, and in whom there is the spirit of the holy gods. And I told him the dream. O Belteshazzar, the chief of the magic practicing priests, I well know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and no secret is too difficult for you. So explain to me the visions I saw in my dream and its interpretation. In the visions of my head, while on my bed, I saw a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was enormous. The tree grew and became strong, and its top reached the heavens, and it was visible to the ends of the whole earth. Its foliage was beautiful, and its fruit was abundant, and there was food on it for all. Beneath it, the beasts of the field would seek shade, and on its branches the birds of the heavens would dwell, and all creatures would feed from it. As I viewed the visions of my head while on my bed, I saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from the heavens. He called out loudly, "Chop down the tree, cut off its branches, shake off its leaves, and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts flee from beneath it, and the birds from its branches. But leave the stump with its roots in the ground, with a banding of iron and of copper, among the grass of the field. Let it be wet with the dew of the heavens, and let its portion be with the beasts among the vegetation of the earth. Let its heart be changed from that of a human, and let it be given the heart of a beast, and let 7 times pass over it. This is by the decree of watchers, and the request is by the word of the holy ones, so that people living may know that the Most High is ruler in the kingdom of mankind, and that he gives it to whomever he wants, and he sets up over it even the lowliest of men. This was the dream that I, King Nebuchadnezzar, saw. Now you, O Belshazzar, tell its interpretation, for all the other wise men of my kingdom are unable to make the interpretation known to me. But you are able to do so, because the spirit of holy gods is in you. At that time, Daniel, whose name is Belshazzar, was alarmed for a moment, and his thoughts began to frighten him. The king said, O Belshazzar, do not let the dream and the interpretation frighten you. Belshazzar answered, O my lord, may the dream apply to those hating you, and its interpretation to your enemies. The tree that you saw that grew great and became strong, whose top reached the heavens and was visible to all the earth, which had beautiful foliage, abundant fruit, and food for all, beneath which the beasts of the field would dwell, and on whose branches the birds of the heavens would reside. It is you, O king, because you have grown great and become strong, and your grandeur has grown and reached to the heavens, and your rulership to the ends of the earth. And the king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from the heavens, who was saying, Chop down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump with its roots in the ground, with a banding of iron and of copper among the grass of the field. And let the dew of the heavens make it wet, and let its portion be with the beasts of the field, until 7 times has passed over it. This is the interpretation, O king. It is the decree of the Most High that must befall my lord the king. You will be driven away from among men, and your dwelling will be with the beasts of the field. And you will be given vegetation to eat just like bulls, and you will become wet with the dew of the heavens, and 7 times will pass over you, until you know that the Most High is ruler in the kingdom of mankind, and that he grants it to whomever he wants. But because they said to leave the stump of the tree with its roots, your kingdom will be yours again after you come to know that the heavens are ruling. Therefore, O king, may my counsel be acceptable to you. Turn away from your sins by doing what is right, and from your iniquity by showing mercy to the poor. It may be that your prosperity will be extended. All of this befell King Nebuchadnezzar. 12 months later, he was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon. The king was saying, Is this not Babylon the Great, that I myself have built for the royal house by my own strength and might, and for the glory of my own majesty? While the word was yet in the king's mouth, a voice came down from the heavens. To you it is being said, O King Nebuchadnezzar, the kingdom has gone away from you, and from mankind you are being driven away. With the beasts of the field your dwelling will be, and you will be given vegetation to eat just like bulls, and 7 times will pass over you, until you know that the Most High is ruler in the kingdom of mankind, and that he grants it to whomever he wants. At that moment, the word was fulfilled on Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven away from mankind, and he began to eat vegetation just like the bulls, and his body became wet with the dew of the heavens, until his hair grew long just like eagles' feathers, and his nails were like birds' claws. At the end of that time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, looked up to the heavens, and my understanding returned to me, and I praised the Most High, and to the one living forever I gave praise and glory, because his rulership is an everlasting rulership, and his kingdom is for generation after generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are regarded as nothing, and he does according to his own will among the army of the heavens and the inhabitants of the earth. And there is no one who can hinder him or say to him, What have you done? At that time, my understanding returned to me, and the glory of my kingdom, my majesty, and my splendor returned to me. My high officials and nobles eagerly sought me out, and I was restored to my kingdom, and even more greatness was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, am praising and exalting and glorifying the King of the heavens, because all his works are truth, and his ways are just, and because he is able to humiliate those who are walking in pride. Chapter 5. As regards King Belshazzar, he held a great feast for 1,000 of his nobles, and he was drinking wine in front of them. While under the influence of the wine, Belshazzar gave an order to bring in the vessels of gold and silver that his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple in Jerusalem, so that the king and his nobles, his concubines, and his secondary wives could drink from them. Then they brought in the gold vessels that had been taken from the temple of the house of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles, his concubines, and his secondary wives drank from them. They drank wine, and they praised the gods of gold and silver, of copper, iron, wood, and stone. At that very moment, the fingers of a man's hand appeared and began writing on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace, opposite the lampstand, and the king could see the back of the hand as it was writing. Then the king turned pale, and his thoughts terrified him, and his hips shook, and his knees began to knock together. The king called out loudly to summon the conjurers, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers. The king said to the wise men of Babylon, "Any man who reads this writing and tells me its interpretation will be clothed with purple. A gold necklace will be placed around his neck, and he will rule as the third one in the kingdom." Then all the wise men of the king came in, but they were not able to read the writing or to make known the interpretation to the king. So King Belshazzar was very frightened, and his face turned pale, and his nobles were perplexed. Because of the words of the king and his nobles, the queen entered the banqueting hall. The queen said, "O king, may you live on forever. Do not let your thoughts terrify you, nor let your face turn pale. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of holy gods. In the days of your father, enlightenment and insight and wisdom, like the wisdom of gods, were found in him. King Nebuchadnezzar, your father, appointed him as chief of the magic practicing priests, conjurers, Chaldeans, and astrologers. Your father did this, O king. For Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar, had an extraordinary spirit and knowledge and insight to interpret dreams, to explain riddles, and to solve knotty problems. Now let Daniel be summoned, and he will tell you the interpretation." Guys, there's a train coming through, so it's going to get loud, so we're going to wait here a second. Sorry, guys. Hopefully you can still hear me. I'm going to go ahead and continue. So Daniel was brought in before the king. The king asked Daniel, "Are you Daniel of the exiles of Judah, whom my father the king brought out of Judah? I have heard concerning you that the Spirit of God is in you, and that enlightenment and insight and extraordinary wisdom have been found in you." Now the wise men and the conjurers were brought in before me to read this writing and to make its interpretation known to me, but they are not able to tell the interpretation of the message. But I have heard concerning you that you are able to provide interpretations and to solve knotty problems. Now, if you are able to read the writing and to make its interpretation known to me, you will be clothed with purple, a gold necklace will be placed around your neck, and you will rule as the third one in the kingdom. Daniel then replied to the king, "You may keep your gifts and give your presents to others. However, I will read the writing to the king and make known its interpretation to him. As for you, O king, the Most High God granted to Nebuchadnezzar your father the kingdom and greatness and honor and majesty. Because of the greatness he gave him, All peoples, nations, and language groups trembled with fear before him. Whomever he wanted, he killed or let live, and whomever he wanted, he exalted or humiliated. But when his heart became haughty and his spirit became hardened, so that he acted presumptuously, he was brought down from the throne of his kingdom, and his dignity was taken away from him. He was driven away from mankind, and his heart was made like that of a beast, and his dwelling was with the wild donkeys. He was given vegetation to eat, just like bulls, and his body became wet with the dew of the heavens, until he came to know that the Most High God is ruler in the kingdom of mankind, and that he sets up over it whomever he wants. But you, his son, Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, although you knew all of this. Instead, you exalted yourself against the Lord of the heavens, and you had them bring you the vessels of his house. Then you and your nobles, your concubines, and your secondary wives drank wine from them, and praised gods of silver and gold, of copper, iron, wood, and stone, gods that see nothing, and hear nothing, and know nothing. But you have not glorified the God in whose hand is your breath, and all your ways. So the hand was sent from him, and this writing was inscribed. And this is the writing that was inscribed. This is the interpretation of the words. God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. You have been weighed in the balances and found lacking. Your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Then Belshazzar gave the command, and they clothed Daniel with purple and placed a gold necklace around his neck. And they heralded concerning him that he was to become the third ruler in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was killed, and Darius, the Mede, received the kingdom. He was about 62 years old. Okay, we're going to read chapter 6, and this is basically about the lion's den and how Daniel was saved from lions. It seemed good to Darius to appoint 120 satraps over the whole kingdom. Over them were 3 high officials, one of whom was Daniel, and the satraps would report to them so that the king would not suffer loss. Now Daniel was distinguishing himself over the other high officials and the satraps, for there was an extraordinary spirit in him, and the king intended to elevate him over the entire kingdom. At that time, the high officials and the satraps were seeking to find some grounds for accusation against Daniel respecting matters of state, but they could find no grounds for accusation or anything corrupt, for he was trustworthy, and no negligence or corruption could be found in him. These men then said, "We will find in this Daniel no grounds for accusation at all, unless we find it against him in the law of his God." So these high officials and satraps went in as a group to the king, and they said to him, "O King Darius, may you live on forever. All the royal officials, prefects, satraps, high royal officers, and governors have consulted together to establish a royal decree and to enforce a ban that for 30 days whoever makes a petition to any god or man except to you, O king, should be thrown into the lion's pit. Now, O king, may you establish the decree and sign it, so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be annulled." So King Darius signed the decree and the ban. But as soon as Daniel knew that the decree had been signed, he went to his house, which had the windows of his roof chamber open toward Jerusalem, and 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed and offered praise before his God, as he had regularly done prior to this. At that time, those men burst in and found Daniel petitioning and pleading for favor before his God. So they approached the king and reminded him about the royal ban. "Did you not sign a ban stating that for 30 days any man who makes a petition to any god or man except to you, O king, should be thrown into the lion's pit?" The king replied, "The matter is well established according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be annulled." They immediately said to the king, Daniel, who is of the exiles of Judah, has paid no regard to you, O king, nor to the band that you signed, but 3 times a day he is praying." As soon as the king heard this, he was greatly distressed, and he tried to think of a way to rescue Daniel. And until the sun set, he made every effort to save him. Finally, those men went in as a group to the king, and they said to the king, "Take note, O king, that the law of the Medes and the Persians is that any ban or decree that the king establishes cannot be changed." So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the pit of lions. The king said to Daniel, "Your God, whom you are continually serving, will rescue you." Then a stone was brought and placed over the entrance of the pit, and the king sealed it with his signet ring and with the signet ring of his nobles, so that nothing could be changed with regards to Daniel. The king then went to his palace. He passed the night fasting and refused any entertainment, and he could not sleep. Finally, at the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's pit. As he got near the pit, he called out to Daniel with a sad voice. The king asked Daniel, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you are continually serving, been able to rescue you from the lions?" Daniel immediately said to the king, "O king, may you live on forever. My God sent his angel and shut the mouth of the lions, and they have not harmed me, for I was found innocent before him, nor have I done any wrong to you, O king." The king was overjoyed, and he commanded that Daniel be lifted up out of the pit. When Daniel was lifted up out of the pit, he was completely unharmed, because he had trusted in his God. The king then gave an order, and the men who had accused Daniel were brought, and they were thrown into the lion's pit, along with their sons and their wives. They had not reached the bottom of the pit before the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. Then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, and language groups dwelling throughout the earth, "May you have abundant peace. I am issuing an order that in every domain of my kingdom, people are to tremble in fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his rulership is eternal. He rescues, saves, and performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. For he rescued Daniel from the paw of the lions." So this Daniel prospered in the kingdom of Darius and in the kingdom of Cyrus the Persian. That was really neat. I like that. Okay. Daniel served King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, a mixed blessing. Nebuchadnezzar had destroyed Daniel's home, killed many of Daniel's people, and leveled the temple of Daniel's God. Daniel, the servant of Jehovah, was forced to serve an enemy king. Yet as soon as Daniel understood Nebuchadnezzar's dream, foretelling a horrible future for this rogue, he was aghast and wondering how to break the news. He even told the king he wished that the dream's foreshadowed judgments would happen to the king's enemies and not to Nebuchadnezzar. How could Daniel so deeply grieve the fate of an enemy? He had forgiven the king. You do not have to like or endorse hurtful actions. Perhaps you'll even need to put a stop to them. But you can forgive the offender. Jehovah may even use you in an extraordinary way in that person's life, much as he used Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar's. The next time someone hurts or mistreats you, ask Jehovah to help you forgive him or her, and lay aside any plans you may have to get even. And this is a hard one for me. I struggle sometimes with forgiveness. I know that there is someone who I am really good friends with now that was an enemy of mine in the past and hurt me very, very deeply. But I forgave them, and I feel Jehovah is using me in their life in an extraordinary way. And I am still a work in progress, and I am still trying to forgive others in my past who have harmed me, and I will just continue to ask Jehovah for strength and guidance to do the right thing, and I hope you guys do too. I hope you guys are able to pray and find a way to forgive those who have wronged you or wronged the ones you love. And with that, we are done. I hope you guys have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever and wherever you're watching this. Love and hugs, guys. Bye.